A play fake. Young goes deep middle. He's got Jerry Rice. Touchdown 49ers!
Welcome to another edition of the 49ers Family Podcast, where three generations of 49ers fans break down the game each week and hear from Grandpa Mike as he shares personal experiences since he became a fan in 1949. My name is Josh, and I'm here with my grandpa, Mike. My dad, Jared, has the night off. He's off in Hawaii with my mom, so giving him the night off, well-deserved. But we are the 49ers family. Okay, let's get going. So, recapping the Panthers. Grandpa, how are you feeling?
I feel really good, Josh. It was a convincing win. It was an expensive one with injuries.
Yep.
But we really dominated the Panthers. In fact, the coach got fired the day after the game. It was a little Mosley's pick six. Just once that happened, we were, we had a good lead throughout the game and won 37-15. So I, not to be too critical, but I didn't like right at the end when we have big leads, the other team brings in their backup quarterback and gains yards, and we're fighting for the top defensive team, and those yards kind of hurt you, where the whole game we really held them down. Just some other thoughts is Mooney Ward is he has really made our defense
amazing.
I mean, the difference from last year to this year, we had Norman last year who kept getting pass interference penalties, and he was just done over the hill after Verrett got hurt on the first game against Detroit. And our pass defense was, I considered it weak. It was certainly our weak point, and our opponents took advantage of that. Now, signing Ward has really made a difference. I mean, it's tightened up all three levels. Yep. And, each game, the opponent throws long passes and they're batted away. So I really, really, really love Mooney Ward. And we just, statistically had a really good game. We converted 7 of our 12 third down plays, which is really good. Jimmy had a great game statistically, and especially on third down. And our defense played very, very well. That's to become expected now. So it was a great game. And just 2 other quick comments. One, I was concerned going into the game because of our emotional win on Monday night against the Rams. And, you don't want to have a trap game or a letdown. So I worried about that, and that did not happen. And let's see, the other one was, we went into first place. So it was a perfect Sunday. We won, in our 3 division opponents, the Rams, Cardinals, and Seahawks, all lost. So it was a glorious day. So, yeah.
It was awesome. No, great points. And I totally agree with a lot of what you just said. That it was really like a good day on offense, I would say. It wasn't a great day. It was good, and it could have been bad if we didn't convert on the third downs. But both Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel mentioned that for the last 2 weeks, what they've really been focusing on is the money down, is the third down. Going 7 for 12 is huge, because Carolina only went 3 for 15. It really it does a lot for momentum, getting in a rhythm. And I will say Jimmy is doing a good job not turning the ball over. Really good job. He's getting the ball out. He's keeping it once again around that 2.5 second mark. which is good for him and good for the defense, good for the rest of the offense. Statistically, who he's thrown to, I thought was actually pretty fascinating this game, that George Kittle had the most targets. He was kind of on the lower side through kind of the first 4 games, but he ended up with 5 receptions for 47 yards. Brandon Ayuk, and Tevin Coleman, and Juwan Jennings, then Kyle Juszczyk, then Deebo Samuel only had 2 receptions for 20 yards. He was targeted 9 times, but nice to see that we can still move the ball, find the right guy, not just our only playmaker, Deebo Samuel. So I actually was encouraged by that, even though I had Deebo on my fantasy team, and I was hoping him to be a little bit more productive. But no, it was good. And then I will also say, Mooney Ward, every single game he's making a play. He's taking points off the board, matching stride for stride with their number 1 wide receiver. Love to see that. Today, or maybe it's yesterday, Kyle Shanahan was asked in his presser about the risks of signing a free agent to a big deal. You hope that you get a home run, and he said it's safe to say that we hit a home run with Charvarius Ward already 5 games in. He's made a difference, like you said. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, he really solidifies the defense. On a down note, special teams did not play well. And that was disappointing. I mean, we had a field goal blocked, and their return
200 yards in kick return yards. Yikes.
And we lost Robbie Gould on one of the tackles because their guy Blackshear, he returned 2 of the kicks, 40 something yards, and Robbie Gould tackled the guy and got hurt. So anyway, special teams needs to, we need Bruce Snyder to get to work here.
I know we signed a kicker to the practice squad, Sam Sloman. I think I'm pronouncing it right. And just in case Robbie Gould isn't ready for Sunday, he is probable or questionable. We'll see how he's doing. I think they didn't want to put him in there. 1, we were up. 2, you don't want to make anything worse than it is. You want to be able to get it evaluated, get an X-ray or MRI, see what things are like. And I think that was a good call. It was kind of funny to see Mitch Wishnowsky try and attempt some field goals. And I will say on the kickoff, he actually did a great kickoff. But that first after attempt was so bad. And then the second one, he got it in though. So I'll give him that. He probably is not practicing that much.
They don't practice. So they're not, it's all timing. It's, and Wishnowsky is the holder typically.
Right.
So anyway, it didn't matter. But that's how vulnerable you can be. And, it concerns me this week. I don't like when we have to substitute a kicker. It just, if the game's close and it comes down to the nitty gritty, I'd rather have Robbie Gould in there. So his injury, it's a contusion. It didn't sound that serious, although, we'll see. And it's typical of the 49ers to hold somebody out an extra week.
Right.
And it drives me nuts, but I am always looking for perfection. So, good game. And we're in first place. So, I mean, 2 weeks ago it was gloom and doom, and now we're a game ahead in the NFC West.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit more about some kind of like where we find ourselves as far as the league goes. With our record 3-2, but the way that we are winning, the 2 losses seem to be kind of fluke losses. So in reference to the rest of the league, we are skyrocketing up the power rankings. In the majority of power rankings, we're now like 5, 6, 7,
Right.
which I honestly would agree with. I don't think that we're top 5. I don't think that we're after 10. I would say we're probably in that 5 to 10 range. And given the status of who's playing, because we'll talk a little bit more about injuries going into the game against Atlanta. We can play. We can play with anybody. I think our defense is going to, as we've mentioned, our defense will keep us in a lot of games, and the offense just needs to execute and not turn the ball over. I think that's a really big one. One point though is, we've mentioned some of the metrics before of like defensive EPA versus offensive EPA, and that's like, correct me if I'm wrong, Grandpa. It's like, what's the E again? E and then points against, or I forget what it's, but EPA. Essentially, it's talking about efficiency. I think it's efficiency. Don't quote me on this, listeners. Efficiency plays on average or something like that. And so it's how well do you do? If you're positive, so more than 0, like a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, that's good. Obviously, if you're negative, that means that you're less than average or kind of lower than the 50th percentile. And comparing the two, so using like the offensive EPA on the x-axis and defensive EPA on the y-axis, we are in the top right quadrant, which is where you want to be. And the other teams in that top right quadrant are the top teams in the league: the Bills, the Chiefs, the Eagles, and us. And then closer to the middle, so these means that they're just barely over the hump, are actually the Jaguars and the Patriots. So that's kind of interesting. But we are in that kind of top tier, if you will, with those teams, and I think that's something to note. And that means that both the offense and the defense are taking care of business, which is great to see.
Yeah, there's so many metrics now. In all sports, it does get confusing.
It does.
But anyway, yeah, so we have climbed the power rankings, and I mean, it's just an opinion, somebody's opinion, but yeah, we're on the upswing and getting stronger and stronger. So I'm very encouraged. Very happy.
Yeah.
I remember at the beginning, our preview show, you thought we could even go 4-4 in the first half of the season. And I went, oh no, well, that's starting to look like a reality. Or, I didn't expect to lose to the Bears, and I didn't expect to lose to Denver. I didn't know that we'd beat the Rams like we did, but yeah, so the first half of the season, and we're kind of coming to that now. 5 games on the road, 3 at home. That's a big thing. So the second half of the season will be the flip-flop of that. We'll have lots of home games, right, and lesser opponents. So anyway, we're doing very well.
We are doing well
at 3-2.
We are. It's an optimistic 3-2. Definitely helps, like you said, that the rest of the division lost. So right, everybody else, we have a game on everybody, which is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about more injuries kind of going into that Atlanta game. So Atlanta, which I feel like we have a lot of kind of historic games against Atlanta, especially in the playoffs or close to the playoffs, that we'll talk about in a second. But the game itself is another East Coast game. It's an early kick. We got spoiled with the late kick, which I think was great because we had to travel that week. This time they're staying once again at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. And this one's an early kick. It's a 10 a.m. Pacific time kick in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a dome, so the weather really isn't an issue. San Francisco leads that all-time series 48 games to 32, and there was one tie in there. Last year we did play the Falcons, and it was almost similar to the score against the Panthers. We beat them 31-13, so a pretty good one. the line opened at favoring the Niners by 6.5, and it has since moved to 5.5, which I thought was interesting. But overall, let's talk about some of those factors leading into the game, starting with our own team, our beloved 49ers. What do you think, Grandpa? What are the injuries or players with injuries that are of note to watch going into this game?
Well, it's through the whole Shanahan regime, 6 years now, we have always been one of the leading in the top 10 as far as injuries is concerned. And so I had hoped this year that cloud would pass and we'd have a very light injury list. And that's not been the case. We are losing a starter a game and sometimes more. Technically today, which is Wednesday, our whole defensive line our first string defensive line didn't practice. And I mean, so it's starting, the injuries are very concerning. There's just too many of them. And we have a great starting cast and a good, a lot of backup on the defensive line, but Jimmy Ward, he played one down and broke his hand.
They said he actually got hurt. He broke his hand on the kickoff.
Right.
On the kickoff return, and then he didn't want to believe that he actually broke his hand. So then he tried to play a play and went to wrap up or grab a guy and couldn't grab, and he just said and he went to the sideline. They evaluated it and said, yeah, you probably broke it. Unbelievable. What the
Jim, he was the '1 draft pick years ago. He's one of our older senior players now, but Jimmy Webb was a #1 draft pick, and he has gotten hurt a lot throughout his career. Some guys are just that way. But when I watch Jimmy play, he really plays hard and he hits really hard. And so that's probably one of the reasons he gets hurt so much. But they're going to see and make an evaluation whether he can play or not. And there's belief that he can, and he probably will miss very likely the Atlanta game, but he very likely can play in the Kansas City game.
Yeah, I saw that too. They have to wait 10 days. He had surgery yesterday, and they have to wait 10 days to evaluate if he can play with the club. They are welcome to that if they can get clearance to play with the club, which you would think that he could, but we'll see. We'll see. It would be great to have him back, even if it's just for depth. I mean, just for giving, Hufanga and Gibson that have been playing lights out. We've talked about that plenty on the show. But even just to give them depth and Jimmy Ward's presence on the field, leadership, as you mentioned, he is one of the more tenured players, drafted before John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over. So it would be great to have him back for the Kansas City game. Other one that is a huge injury / we'll see how much of an injury it is Nick Bosa. He held himself out, said that he was feeling something in his groin. He didn't pull it yet, but even about to pull it, he and I listened to a podcast they were talking about probably because his brother Joey Bosa is actually having mid-season groin surgery, is going to miss 8 to 10 weeks. He probably is trying to prevent that. He's close to his brother. He does a lot. He works out with his brother in the off season, talking to him. So he's probably trying to prevent that from happening. And so this week, they're just really focusing on physical therapy, what they can do to rest him, get that groin right. And he's questionable for this week against Atlanta. we are banged up. The other ones, what are the other ones? I mean, already knew about,
Well, we have the lingering ones. Eric Armstead, he's got this foot injury that either is corrected quickly or can linger forever.
Right.
And then of course we lost number 4, and
I know that was a big
I mean, that's for the season. And
Emmanuel Moseley was playing great, as we mentioned previously, got that pick 6.
yeah.
He was really playing good this year, and it's really, it sucks for him. Just, this is a contract year for him, last year of his contract. So he's, here to prove himself, to get that next contract. Now he's got to get his ACL repaired and rehab from that. We all know that it takes really about 10 months to get back to 100% game speed. And that's a long time. And that's going all the way to next August, pretty much at the end of training camp is when he might be cleared. Somewhat similar to, honestly, to, something that we're just about to mention is Jason Verrett, that he, with Emmanuel Moseley going down, is coming back from his own injury that, as you mentioned, he got injured in the first game of the season last year, and they are trying to be careful with bringing him back too soon, because you can get exposed. There's a difference between practice speed and game speed, so want to make sure that we're good there and that we're not putting the defense, in a bad situation. So something to watch there. I think they're going to see how Jason is doing leading up to Sunday, and then seeing if they're going to activate him, put him on the 53-man roster or not. So
with Verrett, we're in a 3-week timetable. The team, once he starts to practice, we have 3 weeks to put him on the 53-man, and if we don't, then he's gone for the year.
Yep.
So I'm sure the team is very sure that he can come back. I don't know that he'll play this week, but
yeah, he might be activated. Yeah, agreed. He might be activated just for depth as well. Like, still give it to Ambry Thomas instead of Emmanuel Moseley. Ambry started at corner plenty of games last year as a rookie. So we're still good there, but you look at the depth chart, the only people really behind them are Dante Johnson, who's on the practice squad. And if you want to move somebody over from nickel, like Diamador Lenore or Samuel Womack, so it becomes a depth issue of how much do you put yourself at risk? Do you bring Jimmy just for depth, even though you hopefully don't have to count on him?
I don't expect, the Niners are always very safe with injuries. They keep players out a week longer than sometimes needed and necessary, and maybe that's the smart thing to do. I'm not a doctor, but I always want these guys playing. So yeah, the injuries are taking its toll. There's just a lot of them, and Elijah Mitchell. Now, Jeff Wilson has just stepped in, and we, in a way, haven't missed a beat. He had 120 yards, 17 carries. He was averaging 7 yards a pop, and he's fast.
He's so fast.
Yeah, he's the last 2 weeks, he's had one of the fastest runs in the league.
Right,
20 miles an hour. He's running 20 miles an hour, if you can imagine.
Right. So, and he had that 41-yard carry was beautiful. He hits that hole so fast, and just boom, he's gone, and it just becomes just a running rate, a track meet between pretty much him and the safety that's opposite side of the field, trying to catch up to him, and he did right before he got to the end zone. But you love to see that. You love to see that.
Yeah. So so our defensive backfield is kind of banged up, but the good news, and I always look at this, maybe we're getting a little far ahead of ourselves here, but as coaches do, they look at their next opponent to see where their strengths and weaknesses are. And Atlanta is a running team. They average 164 yards a game. So
Yep.
they run the football, and that's one of our many strengths. We're number 2 against the run. So so that'll be good. And what I'm saying here is that Marcus Mariota is going to run first and pass second. So but the score changes that. I mean, there's, if Atlanta got way behind, then they're going to pass. But
yeah, well, they're known. Yeah, right now they're dealing with honestly their own set of injuries with Kyle Pitts. He didn't play last game. Same thing with Cordell Patterson. Their starting running back did not play. I do not know the status of them for this game. Do we know, Grandpa, if they're going to be?
Patterson is out for the year.
Oh, Patterson's out for the year. Oh my gosh, I missed that.
The year. Yeah, he's not. He won't play again this year. Pitts did not play, and he hasn't been practicing. He's a really good tight end. So don't know with 3-4 days to go here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so every team has injuries. It just seems like ours, we have more.
Yeah. Okay, I just pulled something up. It says that Pitts returned to practice yesterday and expects to play.
Okay.
That to me seems like a probable, but not definite. But yeah, Pitts, and their weapons right now are obviously Pitts. He is phenomenal. Drake London is having a good year, rookie out of USC. And then another rookie that they're now relying on with Cordell Patterson out is my boy Tyler Algier from BYU.
Yeah, right.
And he's a bruiser. He runs fast. He runs head down. He's not the most shifty guy, but that guy has really good game speed. So he's somebody to watch. And then of course we all know, watching him at Oregon, and then kind of throughout the league, this is now his third team. Marcus Mariota also has some legs. I saw a little bit of the game last week with Atlanta versus Tampa Bay, and he picked up some first downs. He can make you pay if you don't honor his legs.
What was also interesting about the Tampa Atlanta game is Brady threw 52 passes. So again, when you look at the numbers, that's Atlanta's weakness is against the pass. With Jimmy, I don't know that we're going to, pass, tremendously, but that is definitely a weakness.
Yeah, it should open some things up though, because and I think we will be a little bit more pass heavy than run heavy this time, because once again, looking at what their weakness is, as you mentioned, they allow 278 yards passing per game, which is 29th in the league, so almost last. And so, I think once again, comparing Tom Brady, knowing his system versus Jimmy Garoppolo, pretty similar. It's get the ball out quick, give your guys a chance to make a play. Tom Brady likes to throw out into the flats a lot, and Leonard Fournette had a huge game receiving and rushing, honestly. But I think we'll see a lot of what honestly fits nicely into Jimmy's strengths. Get the ball out quick, get it to BA, get it to Debo, utilize Juwan Jennings on the third downs. He seems to always find a way to get open on third downs. And then George Kittle. And we have plenty of weapons for Jimmy to throw to. So I think this is going to be a good game to see how good of a passing attack we can create and kind of game plan for.
But another note, we were very concerned at the beginning of the season about our offensive line and the new guys, the center and the 2 guards, and then Trent Williams went down. So we technically have 4 very young players on the offensive line, and they've played well. I mean, not perfect, but Jimmy's getting rid of the ball quick, which is very, very important.
Yep.
And he hasn't turned it over. So that's when Jimmy doesn't throw an interception, we win. I forget the numbers, but it's very, very high.
It is.
Yeah.
His record without a turnover is like we win 90% of games.
Yeah. So
that's going to be big.
Yeah.
So I will bring up, before we get to some of our game predictions and things, let's talk about some of our Falcons Niners memories. I will mention my favorite. I'm younger than you, so my Rolodex is shorter of memories.
By 50 years.
By 50 years. But my favorite one, just because it was such an epic play at an epic time by one of my favorite linebackers, Navarro Bowman, pick at the stick, last game at Candlestick, to send the Niners to the playoffs. Matt Ryan really was having a heyday, just thrown all over the field that game. And it was just like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And hits his guy, but he doesn't grab it. It bobbles it. It goes up in the air. Navarro Bowman is in stride, catches the ball, and just has nobody in front of him, and just flies down the field. And it was one of those things like, is this seriously happening right now? I wish I was there. I have a friend that was there, Nate Larson, if you're listening to this, was at that game. He wanted to go to a game at Candlestick before they tore it down. And just said the place went crazy. Just such a huge moment to send the Niners to the playoffs.
Right. And that was a game that was very tight. And Matt Ryan was driving Atlanta down the field with very little time left. Had they scored, they would have won.
Yep.
And I mean, so what was the game? And then Navarro Bowman did a flip into the end zone.
That's right.
After 89 yards, he does a flip into the end zone. So that was, he was quite an athlete from Penn State, Navarro Bowman. Yeah, he complimented Patrick Willis so well. We were really strong.
Oh yeah, that was a good linebacker core right there. One of the best.
And then there's Atlanta was in our division for many years, so we played them twice a year. Especially Atlanta became an expansion team in 1966, and so we were beating them regularly twice a year until they got better. They got Dion, and they had forget the receiver's name. He was so they beat us a couple of times, and it was unexpected. We were heavy favorites, and here comes Atlanta. They just really started improving, and Dion was doing his shtick, showing off and everything, and would go against Jerry Rice, which was just one of the all-time classics. Dion against Jerry Rice, and they both did well.
They did. I've seen some of those battles, and it was like watching a boxing match back and forth. One would make a play, and then the other would make a play, and one would make a play, and the other would make a play.
Yeah. And then Dion joined the Niners in '94 for only 1 year. I wish we had him longer. He was so exciting. He was a defensive player of the year. I mean, and he just was so good that he cut off half the field. Yeah. People just didn't throw in his direction. So, but he still was defensive player of the year. So, a lot of memories with Atlanta.
Another one that actually my father-in-law Brad brought up was that Steve Young's second to last game was against the Falcons in the playoffs. Obviously, we talked about how he got hurt against the Cardinals, but the game before that was in the playoffs. Niners were favored, and Atlanta, as the underdog, took him down in a season that the Niners were firing on all cylinders, and they couldn't make it to the Super Bowl.
Well, there were a number. I mean, we've been to the Super Bowl 8 times or 7 times, but there were probably another 6 or 7 that we could have gone. Yeah. The biggest one was against the New York Giants when we were going for three-peat, and Roger Craig fumbled, and they kicked a field goal right at the end, and we lost 15-13.
We talked about that one too.
eating up the clock, and boy, did that turn. So, yeah, but we have lots of good memories too. In fact, in closing tonight, I'm going to share a story about Super Bowl 23 and my personal experience. So we'll get to that.
Great. Well, let's do some game predictions. So, as we mentioned, Sunday early kick. Niners are staying on the East Coast, so I'm okay with that early kick. But we are a little banged up. Have a few players that are probable, including our kicker. But our defense matches up well with their offense. I'm going to say that the Niners should win this game. They are favored by 5.5 points. I think they win by 10 points. I think it's going to be 24-14.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I worry about our defense, as good as it is, but we have lots of injuries. I think we will win. We should win. And these are games you have to win. So at the end of the season, playoffs and seedings, and it's all based on victories. So you can't give these away like we did the Chicago game and the Denver game. So yeah, I think we'll win. And my prediction is 27-21.
Okay.
Yeah, just
that could happen. I could see that as a very possible score.
Yeah.
I think, as far as keys to the game, real quick, keys to the game, as we mentioned, are not turning over the ball. I think they are going to be looking for those turnovers, trying to expose Jimmy a little bit, especially with Jalen Moore, once again, left tackle, third string, really doing his best out there. I think they're really going to try to expose that and really get pressure on them, knowing that they give up plenty of yards passing. And so the best way to act against that is to get pressure on the quarterback. So I think Jimmy getting the ball quick and preventing turnovers, playing it safe, even if he has to throw it away or throw it into the dirt at somebody's feet, is gonna be key. And then on defense, of course, it's just also, it's going to test our depth on the D line. And I expect the D line to be able to keep up. That's why we invest so much in the D line, but is to make them earn every yard is going to be big.
Yeah. So Atlanta is a running team. They average 164 yards a game, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We're a running team too, and we average 138. So Atlanta will run the ball, and I think we'll be very effective in stopping the run. But Atlanta is real weak against the pass, so as we've kind of mentioned. Mm-hmm. And so they give up 278 yards a game, which is ranked 29th in the league. So there are 32 teams. They're at the bottom as far as giving up passing yards. Mm-hmm. And they give up, they're ranked 27th in total yards given up. So teams are averaging 393 against Atlanta. So they don't have a good defense. And like you said just a minute ago, Josh, the key is always don't turn the ball over. If we don't turn it over, we will win. Yep. We also need to get some turnovers. And I really like how D'Amico Ryans is, he wants 3 or 4 a game. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is a game we should win, and we will win. So
yeah, no, I think it's going to be an exciting one.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, it should be a good game. And early kick, always funny to watch, like football just a couple hours after you get up, start your day. But it should be a good one. All right. Well, as always, we always end with a fun story from Grandpa, as he's been a fan once again since 1949. Grandpa, tell us about Super Bowl 23. Was it Super Bowl 23?
23, yeah. So just a little background on, it was 1988, the season of 1988, and we were 10-6 in 88. It was a disappointing regular season. And then we played Minnesota in our first playoff game, and we won 34-9. And that got us an invitation to Chicago. And this was kind of, we've heard about the 85 Bears since 85 and Mike Ditka and everything. And so they were still the same team, but starting to deteriorate.
Yep.
Go down, but still very good. They were 12-4 in 1988. We were 10-6. So they got home field, and this is the NFC Championship game. And then it turns out to be -6 degrees in Chicago.
Wow.
So, these things are building up. And anyway, we went into Chicago and won 28-3. It just dominated them. It was great. And so what happened after the game, so my brother Tim in San Francisco called me just ecstatic that we won. And he said, Mike, let's go to the Super Bowl. Okay, no plans, no arrangements, no tickets, no nothing. I said, let's go. And so we were just so happy. And then you had to get time off work and, stuff. The game is in 2 weeks. And of course, all the hotels are sold out. The rent-a-cars are sold out. We're kind of Johnny come lately, but I am very creative. And so I was going to mention Tim living in San Francisco. I said, okay, Tim, you get the tickets to the game because you're there, and I will get the hotel and the car, and we're going to the game. So we were really stoked, really excited. So the flights, of course, are full to Miami. So working for an airline, I flew into Orlando, which is 260 miles north of Miami. Nobody thinks of this. You just got to think differently. And I flew first class all the way. And then I got out off the airplane. I went down to Hertz and with no reservation and rented a white Volvo station wagon. And I quickly put my 49er magnetic helmets on the front doors, and I drove to Miami. Now, as you're driving along and you've got the helmets, people are noticing you on the freeway and they're kind of pointing and, and I'm just waving and they think I'm sure like some team official, I'm just a fan. And so I've always believed that if you have a car and there's no hotels, you can find a hotel. So I got to Fort Lauderdale, which is 23 miles north of Miami. And I started looking for a hotel, thinking we need to be near Miami because it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. And so I driving along and I forget the name of the hotel. It was big and it was really very nice. And it said vacancy. So I pulled over and went in and got a room. So I've got the room in the car and it's Tuesday. And then I called my brother that night and told him, okay, I've done my part. How are we doing on the tickets? And there was a lottery in San Francisco.
Because he was a season ticket holder. That's
correct. So he was a season ticket holder. So he was eligible for this Super Bowl lottery. And of course, you never win. Well, he did win, but he only got one ticket. Okay, so they had 2 season tickets. He got 1 Super Bowl ticket. So we had 1. And I had all the confidence in the world. I'm going to get a ticket. Now, in 1988, it's actually January of 89 now, the face value of Super Bowl 23, the face value of the ticket was $100. My budget was $900. I brought 9 $100 bills and for the ticket. I didn't want to spend that, but I would if I had to. And so anyway, it's again Tuesday and I get there, and then my brother flew in on Thursday morning on a charter out of Oakland. And so I'm sorry the story's so long, but it's really good. So I go to pick him up at the airport. In those days, you could go right to the gate. I was the first guy there. He was an all-night charter. He's going to land at 8 o'clock, and I got there at 7 something and went and got a cup of coffee, and then sat in the at the gate. And finally this older gentleman showed up. I was the only one there, and he sits down, and after a few minutes he comes over and he said, "Excuse me, is this where the 49er charter's coming in?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, okay, good." And then he introduced himself, and he was a reporter for the Miami Herald. And he said, "Can I interview you?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'd love it." So anyway, he interviewed me, and so I was in the paper the next day. And this was the beginning of this wonderful weekend. So then my brother came in, it's Thursday, and we start hitting the hotels in Miami and looking for a ticket for me.
Right.
And I thought, no problem, we're going to get one. We didn't. And it was kind of funny because we'd walk into these, the nice hotels, and the doorman would open the door, and I would just say to the doorman, "I need a Super Bowl ticket. Is there any tickets?" And it was probably like a drug deal. I've never done drugs, but people are coming up to me within a minute. "You need a ticket? Need a ticket?" Again, $100 face value. Tickets were $1,200, $1,400, $1,500, and I'm going, "You're out of your mind, no way." And so for the first few days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I mean, that's all we could find was these, $1,500 tickets. So I said to my brother, I said, "Okay, here's what we need to do. We need to get there when the parking lot opens," which was at 11 o'clock. The kickoff was at 5. And I said, "I'll just walk around the stadium and I'll find a ticket." So we got there at 11, and I start walking around Joe Robbie Stadium at the time. I'm everybody I passed, I'm saying, I need a ticket. Who's got a ticket? You got a ticket? And nothing, zero. I mean, for like 3 hours. And I was now getting tired. I don't know how many times I walked around the stadium, but I'm going, "Oh man, this isn't working out." Occasionally I'd go back to the car where my brother and some other people were tailgating, and they're just drinking to beat the band. And, they'd go, "Would you get one?" And I said, "No, and this does not look good." And I started thinking, I've traveled all this way. I'm going to end up watching this game on TV in somebody's RV in this parking lot. And it really made me mad, but I couldn't have worked harder.
Right.
So anyway, it's getting late, and towards kickoff, it's probably an hour and a half before kickoff. So I went to the turnstiles where people are walking in, and I stood there, and there was a guy at the gate next to me. So I went over to him. He was also looking for a ticket. And I said, "So how much are you willing to spend?" And he said, $500. I said, "Okay." So I was just kind of checking out the market, in case it got competitive. So anyway, I'm standing there, and as people are walking in, I'm asking, "Do you have an extra ticket? I need a ticket." Nothing, zero. And so about an hour before the game, there were these 6 guys out about 25 feet from where I was, and they're motioning me to come over. Well, I don't know them, so I'm thinking they're not motioning me, it's somebody else, and they're going, and they start pointing to me. And so I went over to them, and so they said, you need a ticket? You said, I do, I need a ticket. And so they started questioning me as to, so where'd you live in San Francisco? What school did you go to? All these questions. And I'm thinking, do I know these guys? And I don't. So anyway, they hand me a ticket for free. Okay, and I was so excited and so happy. I said to them, I said, look, at this guy at this gate over here, he'll pay you $500. I'll pay you $500. And the guy went, no, just buy the beer. And so I go back to the car and I told my brother, and he said, okay, I want to meet these guys. So we go into the stadium. I'm in the upper end zone. My brother was in the lower end zone, kind of below me. And it turned out these guys were with some company and they had brought a bunch of guests, and somebody either got sick or no-showed. And it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. I mean, what a gift. So, and there's a little more to this story. So this was the game that Joe Montana drove, 90 plus yards in the last 3 minutes and 16 seconds to hit John Taylor with a 10-yard touchdown pass. And we beat Cincinnati at the, at the buzzer, at the gun. But during the game, so I'm in the end zone, and behind me is people are walking, there's a railing. And in the third quarter, somebody's tapping me on the shoulder. And so I turn around and it was ABC TV. And they said, can we interview you? So I said, sure, I'd love that. And so they did. And so I was on television. So I was in the paper. Now I'm going to be on television. So, and then the Niners won the game right at the end. And it's one of the classics. And what a wonderful trip it is. But the lesson I learned in 1989, January of 89, is never go to a game without a ticket. It was just, oh my goodness, it was grueling. I was convinced I am not getting in the stadium, but it turned out all great, including the win. And so that's my Super Bowl 23 story.
That's awesome. That's such a good story. I love that one. I still can't believe that you were able to get a ticket for free to the Super Bowl. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But good for you. That was an exciting game. Just as you were, mentioning, talking about it, I pulled that up, and that was a loaded Bengals team with Boomer and Chris Collinsworth, and they were good.
Ickey Woods doing
they were 12-4 going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they were a good team, and the Niners, even though they had a subpar regular season, they pulled it off with an epic Joe Montana drive, the first Super Bowl of many. Super fun.
Yeah, so just a couple other quick little notes. So at the beginning of the 92-yard drive with 3 minutes and 16 seconds left in the game, they huddle up, and Joe Montana sees John Candy in the stands, and he says to the 10 other guys, look, there's John Candy. Now that's how relaxed he was. There's 3 minutes left in the Super Bowl and you're trailing. So yeah, and then
Mr. Joe Cool. That's a
yeah, he was unbelievable. It was a classic drive, and that's who he was.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story, Grandpa. Well, thanks for sharing.
Of course.
All right. Well, that'll do it for another episode of
Before we go,
that's right.
I wanted to say hello and aloha to Kapenia in Kona, Hawaii, who listens to us in the islands. He's our captain out there in paradise, and we want to thank all the listeners, whether you watch us on YouTube or listen to us on Apple. So anyway, I wanted to be sure to say hello to Capina.
Capena, very good. Yes. Love all the Niners fans out in Hawaii. Love that poly connection that I feel like the Niners have. So very, very cool. Well, awesome. Thanks, Grandpa.
Sure.
We always encourage your comments and suggestions. You can email us at 49ersfamilypodcast@gmail.com. That's 49ers with 49ERS familypodcast@gmail.com. All right. Well, until next time, go Niners.
Go Niners.